Have you or a loved one fallen victim to making this duct tape mannequin? You wrap yourself up and you try to get your measurements and it never looks right? Join me on making the bootstrap dress form that you can get at bootstrapfashion.com. You just send them your measurements and they send you the pattern and you have to do all the rest of the work. There's about a billion different tutorials on YouTube that you can find about people really taking you through step by step with these instructions. This particular video is just going to be about the few things that I would change about the instructions, actually. Some creators that I really did lean on were this creator, Roya. She takes you through in such great detail, as well as this creator, Diane Makes. She also takes you through in great detail. However, this video is just some things that I would change about the instructions. So I started off using my projector actually, which I love. If you don't have a projector for your patterns, you have to get one immediately. First thing I would change about the instructions is the base. The base supports are designed with just this general stand in mind. I was using a lamp post from Walmart, very thin, and it comes apart. So I was able to kind of test out how big it was. This is at the end after I had everything cut out. So then I had to go back and cut out based off of my stand. So just before you cut out the base supports, really check to see how big is your stand. Second thing I would just alert you to is your fabric choice. I really lucked out at the fabric store. I got this perfect skin tone selvage denim woven situation, but it was like pre-interfaced. This is like a sticky, it is clearly glued down. I don't know why. I don't even know, I didn't know that they sold this. If you can find something similar to this, it cuts out the need to interface the entire thing. So try to find that if you can. Three, the horizontal markings that you're going to cut into the seam allowance, make sure you're actually drawing that horizontal line on the wrong side of your fabric before you sew them together. As you see, I started sewing them together and I was like, oh, I forgot to draw on my markings, and it honestly helps so much down the line. Trust me. So where those notches are that I did cut in the seam allowance, I went back before I really got into it and just drew that in. Trust me. Four, make sure you're pinning like you've never pinned before. I quite literally pinned almost every centimeter and it really did help. This pattern just requires everything to align perfectly. And if it doesn't, the whole thing just messes up. So pin like you've never pinned before and hand crank over the pins. Do not just run your sewing machine over these pins. I don't know. I guess it's like old school, just run the sewing machine over, but that is so scary. But see how it's like kind of, there's a curve to everything. As long as where your seam allowance is, if that's flat, then you'll be golden. So pin, pin, pin. Five, notice how it says clip into curves and then press your seams open. Do not clip into your curves unless you really feel called to. But for the front and back of your body, it's not that, unless your body is just set up that way, it's not that curved to where you need to clip in. The main reason I say not to is because you actually need this clipping, and this clipping. Your waist, hip, and chest, you need those specific clippings later to match your inner support to those. If you clip all down the front and the back, when it comes time to match these clippings, you're not going to know which ones unless you maybe take a pen or some sort of marking and mark them. But I didn't do that. This isn't that crazy of a curve to need a clipping. Six, notice here it says do the side back and the side front and then do your zigzags, to then next step match your zigzag lines from the front, the side back and side front to the other side. No, 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 no. Because after you press all of your seams open, and I know the advanced sewists say you must sew, then press, then sew, then press. No, just sew them all together, then press them all at the same time. Because remember those lines that we drew? This is going to be your zigzag. This is going to be your bust, your waist, your hip. This is the zigzag. Why would you try to match zigzags instead of just doing one long zigzag across the whole thing? Take this full form now to your sewing machine and sew the zigzag across your traced lines. Just follow the lines and you will be golden. Seven, the armhole. Okay, this was actually the hardest part of this whole thing. Notice the blue and the red pin at the bottom. Those are the notches on the pattern. So it's actually perfectly lined up to where it needs to be. Yet there was this bunching underneath the armpit. that I couldn't really get rid of. I didn't know how to navigate. So this is where you can start clipping into the seam allowance to really smush that all down to get it flat. And then what I noticed about that, this bunching, as long as it's in the seam allowance within that 3/8 of an inch that it gives you, you're not going to see that bunching. So I just made sure that any sort of bunching that I had to do to get that circle to be flat was inside the 3/8 of an inch. That's the best I could come up with. 8 for the neck. I used these sponges from the $1.50 tree. If you know, you know. And I just glued them together, and they make the perfect size for the neck. So if you can get these from the $1.50 tree, go ahead and get them. 9, your inner support. So what you're looking at right now is the inner support. This middle section is where your stand is going to go into. Remember how earlier in this video I said do not cut into your seam allowance for the front and back body? This is why, because the way that the inner support is sewn to the actual dress form is seam allowance to seam allowance. See how it's the seam allowances are together? You can actually see a little bit better on this side. The seam allowances are sewn together so you don't see the seam on the actual dress form. Imagine if you had cut all into your seam allowance, it would just be much more difficult later on. You don't need to do that. Match your seam allowance to the seam allowance. Also, you'll have to flip the whole entire dress form inside out twice in order to do this step, and it doesn't tell you that in the instructions. 10, the shoulder slope. So this is with the cardboard in, and see how pointy it is? I chose a normal shoulder slope, however. I thought I had pretty normal shoulders. Maybe I should have chosen something more sloped. And I didn't want to go in and cut out some of that cardboard. It matched my pattern perfectly. So I knew that if I take some of that cardboard out, it would affect the rest of the pattern negatively. So I just kept it as is, but just make a note, maybe go for a more sloped shoulder when you're selecting your pattern and measurements. 11, it's time to take your old dress form stuffing and put it in the new dress form. I just wanted to make a point about this cardboard piece. Those holes on the side are supposed to be for your wrists to go through to put the last bits of stuffing in. It's so unnecessary. I just deleted that whole cardboard piece because if you're going to zip it closed, all the stuffing is going to stay inside. Unless you're trying to put your dress form on the floor or on a table, then you might need that cardboard, but I knew I wanted mine on a stand, so it wasn't necessary at all. I couldn't even get the cardboard in, to be honest. And we have the final product. I honestly feel so happy with it. I feel so proud of myself for being able to do this as a quote-unquote beginner sewer. But if we look at those shoulders, they do look kind of wild. But look at the waistline, hip line, chest line, those zigzag lines in the lighter thread. That would have not have been possible had I done it in chunks like the instructions said to do. But those shoulders, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the shoulders, but you know what? It's fine. It's fine. I really like it. I really like it. So, good luck.